everyone, it's Jessica. Welcome back to my channel. And as everyone probably already knows, Leigh Bardugo's Shadow and Bone Season 1 show was recently released on Netflix. And today I just want to give a first impressions preview of episodes 1 to 4. Spoilers for the new Netflix show Shadow and Bone, and possibly spoilers for Leigh Bardugo's Shadow and Bone series as well as her Six of Crows series. This is going to be less of an adaptation comparison and more just an evaluation of how the overall show is blended together. Just some background information with what I'm familiar with as far as Leigh Bardugo's works go. I haven't read either the Shadow and Bone series or the Six of Crows series. Shadow and Bones doesn't interest me. That whole young adult epic fantasy, chosen one, plucked from an orphanage and into a palace style story just doesn't appeal to me anymore. I'm like a little too old for it. I've read it a lot and I just don't feel like there's a lot more that could be added to it. But even though that doesn't appeal to me on paper, sometimes it's fun to watch in a show. There's often a lot of fun outfits, there's interesting backgrounds, and I find that actors can bring a lot to a character. So I'm excited to see the Shadow and Bone part of the show, even though I'm not particularly interested in that book series. As for Six of Crows, it did interest me, and I originally started reading it and almost immediately DNF'd it when I realized that it was a heist situation with 16-year-old children. Just the level of experience, expertise, the brooding, and the angst that was being brought into these 16-year-old characters, for me was way too much. I was like, you can't be this emotionally all over the place, have this much expertise in these areas, and also be 16. I see why it works as a young adult story, but where I am now in my adult life, I just had to let that story go. The one story from Leigh Bardugo I have read all the way through is her debut new adult urban fantasy story, Ninth House. And I love Ninth House. I thought it was really good. The writing style that Leigh Bardugo gives is wonderful. There's a lot of really dark elements. I thought she blended the real world and her imaginary world well. I would definitely read more new adult stories from Leigh Bardugo. In fact, I'm looking forward to the sequel to Ninth House. And in fact, I've talked more in depth about Ninth House before in a past workshop tip. If you want to see more of my feelings about Leigh Bardugo's writing and about some pitfalls that based off of this series are common in her work, you can go ahead and check that video. I will link it in an iCard above. So as I said before, I am really interested and really excited for this series. I love Ninth House, and so I know she's a good storyteller. So even though her young adult novels didn't appeal to me specifically, I feel like they were probably pretty well written and they have some interesting characters, some interesting unique elements, even to a story that I feel like was too overdone. The visual elements, the sound and composing, and what the actors bring to characters that I might feel like are too tropey, they are going to give those little personal elements that bring them to life and make me feel like there's somebody I know instead of just a flat person on a page. I'm going in pretty blind and I'm excited to see what's going to happen. As far as first impressions go, this show is awesome. It's another one of the ones that I watched with my husband. He actually started watching this without me and had to rewatch episodes 1 and 2. I guess he didn't know that it interested me. You know, he watches a lot of shows and I'm very picky, so it's not that big a surprise. I should have probably been more articulate. But anyways, he was telling me the show was kind of confusing and he didn't know how I was going to feel about it. But as we started to watch, I found that some of the things that were confusing and troubling to him, I just shook off. Like, for example, he had a hard time wrapping his head around the fold. I think he wanted more immediate backstory about what that was, how it came into existence, why it was bad. Where for me, like, because I am an immersive storyteller and because I do like to jump in and go, I was totally cool with like, alright, the fold is a bad thing, there's monsters in there, it's separating a country, messing up supply trains, and they want to get rid of it. That was good for me. In fact, later we do get an explanation about the fold, and I could have done without it. I just didn't care that much. Like, why it exists isn't as important to me as the fact that it exists and it's a problem. I will say in episode 2, they spent a very long time explaining you can't use light inside the fold at all, and I think that was for the audience, not for the characters. The problem with that is that later, like maybe 5 minutes later into this journey, one of the characters lights a lantern, and it's like, dude, were you not there for the same long speech I was there for? And I just think this could have easily been worked around. remove the light speech and just have that guy light a lantern and have the audience see the same time the character saw what happens when you light a lantern in the fold. That would have been pretty cool. It would have gone with the whole immersive fold is bad, just accept it and move on situation that we were already enjoying with storytelling. Or they could have created more of a reason for this guy to light the lantern. Like maybe there was some wings flapping and some growling and some shuffling around going on. Maybe it even sounded like something had landed on the boat. Even though they told him not to light a lamp earlier, he was just skittish. He was like, I gotta see what's going on. And that's when he lit this lamp. And personally, I feel like they missed a huge opportunity here with the Sun Summoner. I get that Alina is the Sun Summoner. We're doing a typical young adult chosen one narrative, and she has to be special and unique and do things all on her own and be pulled from everything she knows and loves and go to someplace else where people are shady. That's what we're doing. We have to do it this way. There's no other way, right? So I get that's the story we're watching, but I just feel like, especially the way it was shown in episode 2, where she shoots that wing creature, she goes to check on Mal, the wing creature comes back and starts pulling her away from Mal, and as the two are holding hands together, she summons the light that saves everyone. The opportunity here is obvious. It takes two people to be a Sun Summoner. You have to have affection and trust between two people, as well as a person who's inclined to bring the light. If this had happened this way, it would have explained why they hadn't found a Sun Summoner before. It's pretty obvious the Grisha's powers, the way they bring them out and train them, involves some kind of pain, sacrifice, or loss, and it's done on a very personal, individual level. They don't do training together in groups when they're learning to bring out their powers. They're like with this old lady in a cave. So all of these steps, the pain, the loss, that would stop someone from being a Sun Summoner. And in fact, it would make people less likely to find a Sun Summoner. So this new discovery, if this had been the case, they need to be together, they need affection, and they need someone inclined to be a Sun Summoner, all these things together, that still would have made Alina pretty chosen. But it also would have explained why they couldn't find a Sun Summoner before. It would have kept Mal and Alina together, and they have a great dynamic. I don't think separating them is as interesting story-wise as trying to keep them together would have been. Also, I guess this is just me and sappy me. I like the light solution. It's through working together, it's through fostering affection, it's not through taking things away from people or self-isolation. So I just think that would have been a fun, cool idea. I wish it had gone that way. I understand why it didn't and why it's not, but it would have been really cool, and it would have been great to see Alina and Mal work together, learn to develop a power together that they need to be together to use, and it would have been great for them to find other people like them. Maybe a whole bunch of other Sun Summoners, and maybe other related powers that they didn't even know exist within the Grisha exist between two people, not just one. Also, if they pull Mal and Alina away, right, which they did, and in episode 2, when Alina's speaking to the general, she goes, "You want to know why you've never found a Sun Summoner before? Maybe it's because they don't want to be found." Like, that's a great moment. But it's even better if she gets to the palace, she can't do any sun summoning, and they come to realize it's because she needs Mal there to do sun summoning. That line only gets more powerful. It's not just that the Sun Summoners don't want to be found because the way Grisha treat each other is bad. It's also like everything the Grisha have done to this point, scooping children up away from their families if they have power, separating them, has actually made them less likely to find a Sun Summoner. And I just like the idea that someone who's acting in a cruel way has to come face to face with the idea that everything they were doing was wrong, and it was the exact opposite way to go about getting the results that they wanted. I will say one thing that did confuse both me and Jonathan early on in the episodes was the whole Grisha situation. I didn't understand it. Like, if Grisha are a subset of people with powers within the kingdom, why are they not the rulers of the kingdom? It's kind of weird that they just sit and do the king's bidding. They're the most powerful ones, and they should be ruling. It also seems like there's a group of people who specifically don't like the Grisha. They're from another country, and they don't seem to have an issue with the larger country. They just have an issue with the Grisha people. And that makes me wonder, like, are there other Grisha Grisha in other countries, like each country has their own subset of magic people and their own magic tradition? Or is the Grisha within this country a unique situation and all other countries have a problem with them specifically, even if they don't have a problem with the larger country? Looking at the characters, I thought that all of the actors for each character were well chosen, and the characters look to be somewhere between 23 and 30. These people are acting in a believable manner. They have a certain level of life experience and maturity, and I'm okay with people in this age group being in these situations where I'm not even necessarily comfortable with fictional teens in a fictional world doing some of the things or addressing some of the topics that are being addressed in this series. And I'm going to go ahead and give a white privilege alert right here. I wasn't confused by Alina's mixed background or the fact that people had prejudice against her or that she was in an orphanage and that's why she was with this group of people versus another. All of that made sense. What was confusing for me was just that I didn't see anything different about her visually versus the other people. They're all in these uniforms, they're wearing their hair the same, they seem to have the same hair color, skin color, eye color. I had to stop and look up what that was about. And then I had to stop and look up and see whether or not Shu was an ethnic slur in general or if it was something that they were using within this show. It took me out of the show. Like the fact that I stopped, looked up what was going on, how she was different, what I was supposed to be visually looking for that all these other characters could pick out right away and from a distance. Like, I just can't do that. So I was amazed about that. I think it would have been easier for me to go with this if she'd had like bright green hair or she'd had like some kind of vampire fangs or elf ears or something. Then I'd been like, okay, so that's the physical thing people see right away that identify her as different than them. Now, I'm not going to comment on what I think about the discrimination happening. I just don't know enough to comment on it. It doesn't detract from my viewing experience, and I don't think it necessarily adds or detracts from the character. I do think it does a great job shoring up the orphanage situation. Like, why weren't all the orphans friends together? Oh, well, they weren't friends with Alina because she was a mixed race child. Orphans were already feeling isolated from their larger community. They decided that part of the way they were going to fit in with their community was that they were going to continue to make fun of Alina and outside her. And they don't like Mal because he is too soft, I guess, is the reason. So Mal and Alina team up, and that's why they're their own little group within the orphanage instead of being part of the larger orphanage group. So in that way, I think some of the racial discrimination helped build that story. And even though it took me out of the story all these consistent comments about her ethnicity, because I didn't see how people noticed it right away, her continued discrimination explains a couple other things, I think, that are going on with her character too. And you know, if this adds another level for other people, or if it is something that other people relate to, or people see themselves in Alina, all that's great, and I'm fine with it. The visuals in this world are just amazing, and the world feels very immersive. Alina's plot has like a very thick Russian feel to it, between the garments and the buildings, like the little palace that she ends up being in. It all feels very Russian flavored. Even some of the mythology, the way that they're telling it and they're depicting it, has to me like this sort of Russian flair, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm thinking it's like very refreshing compared to like a traditional British flair or even like an old-timey Americana flair. These are the two kind of like old-fashioned fantasy stories I'm used to consuming. So getting something outside of that feels great. And I think the people who picked the costuming and who picked the set did it with a lot of care and intention, and it really shows. I will say the Six of Crows side of story, I can't tell where that's happening. It feels really generic. It's like generic fantasy casino slash bar land. The clothes they're wearing are more diverse. The streets don't feel the same. The crowd feels more mixed, less unified. So it's a little bit jarring that they're technically both in the same country. I guess this highlights how much the fold has separated the two plots of land. You know, on each side of the fold there is different styles, there's for clothing and for building, and it seems like the dialect, the way of speaking is very different too. I think that could be an amazing touch between the two. It just depends on where you're thinking, where you're coming from with this. Also, I'm really digging the childhood romance between Mal and Alina. It's very sweet. The actor brings a lot to Mal, like just his smiling, the way he seems to perk up when he sees Alina, his little like jaunty skip towards her, the way he's sort of always keeping an eye out on her. I think the actor and the way they set him up in different shots allowed him to have those moments that I don't necessarily think were in the book. And I could be wrong. Guys, if you read the book, let me know if all of that was available to you in the original text. But it seems like something they added to make that relationship more cohesive. And I really appreciate it. I think everything that's going on is sweet and it's telling a story that I'm enjoying. That said, I do like the crows and the crow story way more than Alina's story. So much more. I think the levity of the heist, of the little cloak and dagger thief thing sneaking around is just more fun. And I also think it's like a more unusual story. I know it's kind of tropey too. We have like an Ocean's 11 style trope going on in a fantasy setting. I don't know. I guess part of it is I just like those characters better. Like, I love Inej. I love that she just appears and disappears, all cat burglar style. I like that cat burglar trope in general, and I like that she seems to have a lot of skills and dexterity. She seems highly competent and calm. I love that she has ethics, and there are things she's not willing to do to achieve her goals or to help others achieve their goals, no matter what they are. And I really like Jesper. I think he's fun. He's like a little bit of flair and flash. He's got that like sharpshooter thing going on. All of that's really enjoyable. I don't like Kaz. He's too broody and angsty, and he's got some kind of competition, debt, situation going on with this other character, and maybe I would care about it if I knew, but I don't know why he has this issue, why he won't let it go, and why sometimes he puts this competition ahead of the people who care about him and protect him. So because of that, I don't like Kaz. I don't really care about him. The only thing I care about him is that he doesn't endanger Inej or Jesper. But I mean, I could see where I would come to like and care about Kaz, so I'm leaving that open. And the other thing about it is because I don't like or care about Kaz, and I don't care if he loses his bar or if he beats this dude, it gives me less investment in the Six of Crows story, which is actually good because I can just go along for the ride and have fun. So at this point in time, Six of Crows, yay. Alina is a pretty story happening. Right now it's happening at a very slow pace and it's very stereotypical. I'm living for the visuals and a couple little character moments. I don't know that I would watch the show without the Six of Crows element though. I think I might get frustrated by it. The other thing I want to say is that the general is so obviously evil and creepy. He makes me so uncomfortable every time he's on the scene. But at the same time, and this is the one thing about aging the characters up that might be a problem for them at this point, I can see where the attention that he's giving Alina would be the kind of thing a teen would respond positively to. That a teen wouldn't see the warning signs in and they'd think like, this person really likes me, they really care about me, they're gonna take care of me, we're gonna work together, we're gonna be a team. Like, I can see where a teen would be brought into that. I have more trouble with a young woman being misled by this guy. There's just so many red flags, so many warning signs. But I guess on the flip side, Alina's character is isolated in a lot of ways. So maybe this is the first person who's ever really shown any kind of investment, who's ever been very kind to her or deeply invested in her. And perhaps that's part of where her trust and her affection for him comes from. Another thing I really appreciate is just the visual differences between Alina's story and the Six of Crows story. It's huge. You know, the colors are much brighter on the Six of Crows style, which you guys know I love bright colors, so that's probably part of why I like that story better. But also the camera movement is different. It's more stationary, setup, plan shots on Alina's side. And the shots on the Six of Crows side are obviously very professional and very planned as well, but there's movement. The camera is moving with people, or even if the two people are seated, it's moving around. So it's just giving you more of that heist energy feel, where the other one is giving you more of that training, plotting, planning feel. And I just think that the overall production, the costume design, the choice of sets, and the filming has been really well done with this show so far. And I'm really impressed. Like, they really brought it to another level. It's been a long time since I've seen a show of this quality and like enjoyed myself watching it. So far that's episodes 1 through 4, my basic first impressions, what I'm liking or not liking about it, more what I'm liking I guess than not. It's definitely one of the best shows I've seen so far in 2021. I think the only show I'm watching right now that's better is The Handmaid's Tale, and you'd be hard pressed to tear me away from that show at this point in time. I'm 4 seasons in. So thanks for watching. Let me know if you like Shadow and Bones or not. Leave a comment down below. And let me know if you've read the book, and if you've read the books, is this like the books? How is it different? Give me a little taste of that. And if you enjoyed this video and you enjoy content from a science fiction, fantasy perspective, please consider subscribing to my channel. I do weekly uploads at Wednesday, 7 p.m. Central Time. And right now, I'm also doing weekly uploads on Sundays, specifically a more casual style video that's reviewing episodes of The Nevers. So if you like more TV, analytics, and discussion like this, and you want it more like a conversational friend back and forth, you might want to check that show out too. Anyways, thanks for watching. I hope you guys are having a great day. Bye!